Well, uh, good morning for colleagues, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. Thank you very much for having us here in this panel discussion today. I think all of you know me, but my name is Luís Kimaid. I'm the Executive Director of Bússola Tech. We are a global think tank that works around parliamentary modernization and digital transformation. And I have my huge pleasure and to welcome dear friends and colleagues here in this panel today, starting with Eric Janse, the Clerk of the House of Commons in Canada, Vergottini, the CEO of Xcential Technologies, Julius Kampamba, the team lead of the technical team of SOCAD Africa, José Pedro Montero, the president of the Association of the Secretary Generals of Parliament, and my friend Miguel Landeros, the Secretary General of the Chamber of Deputies in Chile. The topic of today, it's how we could use inter-parliamentary cooperation instruments to boost or to enhance sharing of knowledge about artificial intelligence in our parliamentary institutions. I have prepared a few questions. The duration of our panel is around 1 hour. And I will invite each one of our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves in 1 minute. If you allow me, I'll start with you, Grant. Would you like to introduce yourself, maybe a little bit, your connection to this topic in 1 minute?
Sure. Thank you, Luís. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Grant Vergottini. I am the CEO and co-founder of Xcential Legislative Technologies. We are a small company in San Diego, California, focused specifically on addressing the needs of the legislative information field. I also work very closely on the development of a Komentozo as an OASIS standard, and participate in other bodies around the world in this important field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant, for your introduction. Julius, would you like to do the same and introduce yourself?
Okay. Thank you so much, Luís, for the invitation. My name is Julius Kampamba. I work for the National Assembly of Zambia. I'm the Deputy Director, Monitoring and Evaluation. But for purposes of this engagement, I'm representing the Society of Clerks at the Table, Africa. I'm the team lead of the technical team for SOCAD Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself to the colleagues as well?
Sure, yes. Thanks very much, Luís, and good day, everybody. Perhaps a special thumbs up for Grant, who had to get up extra early to join us. It's a pleasure to be on this esteemed panel. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to see Miguel and José Pedro and others live for quite some time. Our various ASGP and SOCAT conferences always seem to coincide with weeks that we are sitting, so I can't get away. But hopefully we'll see you in person soon again. But in the meantime, it's great to see you all online. So my name is Eric Janse. I am the clerk of the House of Commons here in Ottawa, Canada. I've been clerk for close to 3 years and have worked at the House of Commons for 33 years and have a keen interest in this topic and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Eric. And José Pedro, would you like to introduce yourself as well for colleagues?
Sí, buenos días. Bueno, muchas gracias, Luís, por la invitación. También es un gusto participar, poder ver, bueno, a Miguel lo he visto más seguido, pero a Eric ya hacía unas cuantas reuniones de la asociación que no teníamos la oportunidad de estar juntos, pero ya va a pasar alguna que capaz que en Estambul nos volvemos a encontrar. Bueno, yo además soy secretario general del Senado de Uruguay, pero estoy participando como presidente de la Asociación de Secretarios Generales de los Parlamentos y voy a hablar, pero en nombre personal, no en nombre de la asociación, porque como ustedes saben, la asociación tiene un comité ejecutivo y bueno, fui invitado y voy a dar mi posición. Entre paréntesis y bien cortito, he sido engañado por mi querido amigo Luis, que me dijo, mirá que esto va a ser un tema de diplomacia parlamentaria, de inteligencia artificial. No, yo no domino mucho la inteligencia artificial, pero bueno, trataré de defenderme y dar una posición lo más certera posible. Pero igual lo sigo queriendo a Luis a pesar de esto.
Muchas Muchas gracias, José Pedro. Thank you very much. And yes, it's a panel about interparliamentary cooperation and diplomacy. And Miguel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Bueno, sí, saludos a todos. Bueno, a Eric, que efectivamente hace ya un par de años que no nos vemos. La última vez fue en Ginebra, mostrándole juguetes de inteligencia artificial, y me miraba sorprendido de las locuras que hace Chile. A José Pedro lo veo más. Con Grant estuvimos en Estados Unidos, así que un abrazo, Grant. Sé que tuvo que levantarse muy temprano para estar con nosotros y no tengo el gusto de conocer personalmente a Julius, pero un abrazo aquí de la distancia. Yo, como ustedes saben, soy secretario general de la Cámara de Diputados de Chile hace algunos años, más de lo que mis colegas quieren acá internamente, pero tratamos de liderar una serie de procesos de beneficios mutuos. Así que un abrazo y siempre gustoso de participar en las actividades que nuestro amigo Luis nos invita.
Muchas gracias, Miguel. Thank you very much for joining us today as well. And as I gave as a spoiler to José Pedro, the focus of today's discussions is less on the artificial intelligence side and more on the interparliamentary cooperation side. How can we establish these channels for interparliamentary cooperation focused on artificial intelligence? Because here in this table, we have amazing experiences, for example, in the House of Commons in Canada, in Chile, Uruguay, we started to work on AI as well. We had an excellent conversation with colleagues from the Chamber of Senators in Uruguay. Julius also is leading these efforts on SOCAD Africa. Grant, I don't even need to say about you. You have been leading these for more than 20 years. So my goal here is trying to understand how can we share these good experiences? How can we make even more parliaments and legislatures access this expertise that you're building in your institutions? So I'd like to propose a first question, and I'll invite each one of you to answer in 3 minutes. And well, it's worth mentioning or highlighting that all of you, and you represent the very best of what today artificial intelligence has to offer in regards to experiences, both from the national parliament side, from interparliamentary organizations, from the private sector. The Chamber of Deputies with our friend Miguel has been making remarkable efforts to share its Cámara expertise, even beyond our own region. You mentioned Istanbul with the next meeting, but recently, I had the pleasure of visiting the Grand National Assembly, and I was surprised to see that the Cámara experience had reached Turkey as well. The House of Commons is so frequently known and recognized across the Americas and the Commonwealth regions as a reference in citizen accessibility. Grant here from the private sector has been leading initiatives, creating standards like a Comatoso for, well, since 20 years ago. And within the interparliamentary domain, with SOCAD Africa and the ASGP, José Pedro and Julius have been consistently been provoking this reflection during the meetings. I managed to see and read some of the speeches and the contributions from the participants on AI, and it was very interesting. So to open this conversation, I'd like to invite each one of you to share how your institution has been engaging in interparliamentary cooperation or knowledge exchange that is helping advance the implementation or the understanding of AI within parliaments. So, Julius, would you like to start in 3 minutes?
Okay, thank you so much, Luis. So, before I answer your question, I'll just give a quick overview of SOCAD Africa. Just to explain, SOCAT Africa was established in 1984 as a platform for facilitating knowledge sharing and exchange of good practices around parliamentary procedures. And we are an organ of the CPA Africa. Currently, we have a total membership of 62, which comprise 19 national parliaments and 45 states or provincial legislatures. And these are clustered in sub-region, 4 sub-regions. So in terms of the work of the society is guided by strategic plans, and the work that we do around sharing issues related to good practices are anchored on the strategic plan. We undertake various interventions to facilitate learning and sharing among the members. We facilitate exchange visits. We facilitate sub-regional workshops, and we also conduct what we call the annual professional development seminars, which are held every year. So in terms of what we've done around promoting artificial intelligence, as a point of departure, in 2022, the South sub-region, which comprised 4 countries, South Africa, Namibia, Eswatini, and Lesotho, organized a workshop where they were trying to conceptualize and brainstorm on issues around the e-parliament. The idea was to come up with a blueprint which would be able to give them the minimum standards of what they can look at in terms of integrating ICTs in parliamentary work, as well as integrating artificial intelligence. Then in 2023, SOCAT also facilitated support to the South sub-region, where selected members coming from that region participated in the 2nd edition of the Legislative Tech, the Americas, which was held in Brazil in April 2023, and this was organized by Bússola Tech. And arising from that, we developed a partnership with Bússola Tech. So linked to that, we have been working with Bússola Tech, and in 2024, we had a professional development seminar in Tanzania, at which we invited Bússola Tech to be one of the discussants at one of the panel discussions, which was centered around artificial intelligence in parliaments and emerging core. Interesting lessons were drawn from that, and there were recommendations. And the key concern was the myth that artificial intelligence would take over the work of human beings. But this workshop assisted to demystify that myth. And arising from that, we have seen a number of partners of the members embracing AI in their work. And notably, the Parliament of Sierra Leone has done a lot of work arising from that, and they are seemingly leading the members in terms of advancing artificial intelligence in their work. Then in the same year, we had the annual general meeting, and as part of the annual general meeting, we have lesson sharing workshops. And during that workshop, we also had 2 topics focusing on artificial intelligence. We had a topic focusing on the role of artificial intelligence in transforming parliamentary operations, and also a topic focusing on exploring key considerations and enablers for integrating artificial intelligence in legislative processes and procedures. And this also brought in very interesting discussions, and there were a lot of lessons that were learned. Bússola Tech and a colleague from the Parliament of Brazil were also part of the panel discussions for these 2 topics. So in a nutshell, that's what we've been doing. But again, we are going to have another professional development seminar this year. And one of the things that we are looking at, the seminar will be focusing on public finance management. And one of the things that we want to integrate as part of that seminar is to see how AI can enhance parliamentary oversight around public finance management. So in a nutshell, Luis, that's what SOCAR has been doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius, for your answer. Miguel, would you like to share that as well?
Bueno, voy a hacer un comentario en dos partes, uno propio de los desarrollos en inteligencia artificial, muy breve, y uno propio de lo que más nos interesa, que es la cooperación. Nosotros hemos descubierto en las tareas de cooperación que el desarrollo de los parlamentos a nivel digital y a nivel de nuevas iniciativas o de nuevas innovaciones tiene una serie de falencias. Es decir, no siempre los datos están, no siempre el desarrollo interno de los parlamentos es elevado. Por lo tanto, creemos que la cooperación tiene que ser enfocada conforme al nivel de desarrollo de cada parlamento. Lo que nosotros hemos hecho, o lo que estamos tratando de hacer, es dos tipos de cooperación. Una directa, donde lo hacemos con otra nación de manera de una relación mucho más cercana, entregando los conocimientos que nosotros tenemos y la experiencia que tenemos para el desarrollo propio de esa nación. Porque la hemos recibido así también particularmente del Parlamento Europeo, de Brasil y de otros socios estratégicos que tenemos en esta materia. Y hay un segundo aspecto que son que entra en la diplomacia parlamentaria, que son los foros internacionales, los cuales nosotros nos estamos colgando para poder utilizarlos como base, de manera de que exista una conciencia a nivel de liderazgos políticos y luego de liderazgos técnicos. No siempre el liderazgo político está interesado en estos temas. Generalmente es un tema bastante más secundario y por lo tanto necesitamos líderes que impulsen esto. Hoy día lo estamos haciendo a nivel regional con dos vías. Una con Parlamérica, donde tenemos estrecha colaboración con Canadá, derechamente, porque tenemos la presidencia de Parlamérica a través del senador Flores y por lo tanto es fácil a través de Parlamérica hacer cosas con lo que nosotros llamamos las islas. Cuando uno va a Parlamérica, siempre los parlamentos más pequeños te piden colaboración. Y entonces tenemos algunos recursos y esos recursos los vamos a usar en la cooperación con las islas. Y por el otro lado, tenemos otro foro importante que es Eurolac, que es Europa, Latinoamérica, a través del Parlamento Latinoamericano y otros organismos, Parlacen, el Parlamento Andino, más el Parlamento Europeo, que es un tremendo foro donde podemos hacer cosas también a partir, ¿no es cierto?, de las reuniones sobre grandes temas políticos que hacen nuestros líderes latinoamericanos y los europeos. Y ahí nosotros queremos entrar con proyectos de distinta naturaleza. ¿Qué hemos descubierto? O sea, que no todo el mundo está en condiciones, ¿no es cierto?, de establecer las grandes bases de datos que tenemos nosotros, la vectorización, la capacidad de nuestros ingenieros, la innovación, que necesitan cosas mucho más, yo diría, mucho más prácticas. Y por lo tanto estamos en el desarrollo de estos pequeños programas, ¿no es cierto?, de estos pequeños lenguajes, básicamente en el caso de BART, de Google, y otros como Mistral, donde tú con programas más pequeños puedes ayudar a aquellos países que sus bases de datos no están completamente digitalizadas. Y con países con más desarrollo, como es el caso de Uruguay, entramos ya derechamente con tecnología cloud, con tecnología de Amazon Web Service, que es pagada. Entonces, creo que hay un tema técnico, por un lado, y hay un tema, ¿no es cierto?, de relación política, por el otro, usando los foros que ya existen sin tener que estar inventando foros distintos. Y por último, para no alargarme, porque se me pasaron los 3 minutos que me dieron, recordar que siempre nosotros tenemos dos tipos de los talleres que hacemos en Chile, que van a continuar. Estamos haciendo 2, probablemente uno en enero con Hispanoamérica y otro que hacemos siempre a finales del mes de junio, que es el gran show que hacemos en inteligencia artificial, que va a durar más días y que vamos a tener más amigos invitados. Esperemos que Eric esta vez sí acepte mi invitación y venga a Chile. Total, tiene que recorrer la mitad del mundo nomás.
Muchas gracias, Miguel. Thank you very much for your comments. And Grant, would you like to talk about your thoughts on this question?
Thanks, Luis. It's actually 24 years this month since we started Xcential. I remember the very first meeting we had in a restaurant where we all sat around a table and talked about what our goals were. And the very first thing I said, the very first sentence was, it was my goal to not just build a company, it was my goal to build a whole field. I wanted to build an industry. I saw a need, an opportunity to reinvent how information was published in the legislative field. I come from computer-aided design. I had worked at the Boeing company, and I had seen the benefit of going from homegrown solutions at each company to having a whole field where there were commercial tools. Instead of investing millions of dollars in the applications that were needed, the tools, the field was able to invest billions of dollars, and I could see the benefit. All the laptop computers we have, the smartphones we have, all the modern electronic devices we have today are possible because of those tools that were developed. And I saw the need to do the same thing in the legislative field. That's been our guiding light ever since. It has been part of the structure of the company, has been to foster cooperation, find ways to share knowledge. We could have taken the easy way and just built a series of one-off solutions at each customer we went to, but we took a very different approach. We focused on building a standard for the industry, and that's working with my colleagues at the University of Bologna and the European Commission. We've worked to build a commentoso into that standard, and now we have a standard that gives us a common basis for sharing information. I participate at the Lex Summer School in Ravenna every year, where it's an opportunity for me to share what we've learned and what we're doing with other people in the field, both other commercial vendors and jurisdictions around the world. We participate, sponsor Bússola Tech specifically because of this goal. We've held hackathons, we've participated in conferences over the years, but the goal has always been to create a field, create a whole industry, and not just a company. And that's also shaped how we build our solutions. Rather than building one-off solutions at one customer to another, we've built a product. The idea being that we could collect all the knowledge we've gained as we've worked at jurisdictions around the world and build that into a product, and then be able to leverage that shared knowledge of information across any number of different customers. That was important to me 24 years ago in the information, as we were in the middle of the information age. Now we're in the knowledge age, and it's become even more important that we pool our resources, because to support artificial intelligence is going to take a lot more resources than it ever took to support with the paper-based era of the past. Thanks, Luis.
Thank you very much, Grant, for your thoughts. Eric, would you like to share your ideas on this topic as well?
Sure, yeah, my pleasure, Luis. So given Canada's history and geography, and also our commitment to multilateralism, we're involved with a whole lot of different parliamentary associations. They range from Parliamerica's to the Inter-Parliamentary Union to the Association Parlementaire de la Francophonie, Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, as well as some important bilateral associations. We have one with Canada and the United States. So that keeps us busy, but we also host twice annually a Parliamentary Officer Study Program called POS, where we engage directly with peers on matters related to procedure, technology, good governance within parliamentary institutions. And finally, we also participate in meetings with professional associations of clerks, secretary generals, other parliamentary administrators within Canada, the US, the Francophonie, and globally, again, through ASGP and SOCAT. So when AI emerged on the scene, discussions on the topic started to filter into those larger conferences, debates, exchanges, both at the level of parliamentarians as well as at the level of parliamentary officials in those various respective forums. In particular, I recall being approached by Miguel and José Pedro at ASGP about a year and a half ago regarding their desire to organize a discussion around AI in the Parliament of Chile in June of 2024. So that was probably in fact, it was the first official participation in an interparliamentary diplomacy event solely dedicated to discuss AI in parliaments. So through connections made at that conference, our network and understanding of AI and its use in parliaments has only grown. We have continued to share our own experience of developing guidelines and now our AI strategy with other parliaments through conferences and virtual exchanges with a wide variety of partners and colleagues. We've also offered to share information on our practices, governances, and documentation to help others starting on their journey. And also this allows us to learn what has worked well in other jurisdictions in their adoption of AI. Finally, our administration, working with the Library of Parliament, has also been supporting Canadian parliamentarians who have been also very active in debates around these topics in their own interparliamentary forums. So, for example, Michelle Rampo-Garner at the Inter-Parliamentary Union, Senator Rosemary Modi at the CPA, they've played leadership roles in calling for parliaments to adopt or strengthen legal frameworks regarding AI. So that's just a little bit about all the different aspects and venues that we use to share on AI. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your thoughts on this. And José Pedro, would you like to share your ideas on this first question as well?
Sí, cómo no, Luis. Lo que voy a decir, a diferencia de mis colegas del panel, es lo que viene realizando la Asociación de Secretarios, ¿no? O sea, la Asociación de Secretarios Generales de los Parlamentos ha asumido un rol activo y crucial en la promoción de la cooperación interparlamentaria. Eso lo conocen todos, pero sobre todo en el intercambio de conocimientos sobre la inteligencia artificial. Esto ya venimos de hace unas 4, 5 o 6 reuniones trabajando muy fuertemente en eso. Nuestra participación no se centra en la creación de tecnología, porque eso no le corresponde a la Asociación de Secretarios, sino en actuar como un foro de alto nivel para los administradores de los parlamentos. Los secretarios generales son los funcionarios de más alto rango en la administración parlamentaria y la asociación es la plataforma donde discuten los desafíos prácticos de las implementaciones de la inteligencia artificial y es donde nos nutrimos de los conocimientos de los diferentes colegas que van a exponer ahí. Las principales funciones de la asociación es justamente el intercambio de conocimiento. En sus reuniones, la inteligencia artificial, como lo he dicho, ha sido uno de los temas centrales de debate y la asociación organiza debates generales, capaz que ustedes no saben, donde los miembros presentan comunicaciones, lo que nosotros llamamos comunicaciones, que en realidad son informes sobre cómo los parlamentos están abordando la inteligencia artificial. Por ejemplo, en sesiones recientes se han presentado casos sobre los desafíos de la transformación digital y el uso de la inteligencia artificial en la investigación parlamentaria. Todo esto viene, como ya lo hemos dicho en otros seminarios que hemos tenido, que ha venido evolucionando sobre todo luego de la pandemia, ¿no? O sea, la pandemia es un antes y un después de la pandemia. O sea, yo creo que la pandemia fue un crack que dio a todos los parlamentos del mundo y de los gobiernos en el uso de la inteligencia artificial, o sea, nos ha, ¿cómo puedo decir?, apurado en algo que venía un poco más lento, nos ha dicho, bueno, vamos a empezar a buscar herramientas y eso para poder trabajar mucho, más asiduamente y utilizarla cuando tenemos problemas en la participación en los parlamentos, ¿no? El uso de la inteligencia artificial. Pero a su vez, quiero también decir que la Asociación de Secretarios no trabaja sola, sino que su labor es parte de un ecosistema de cooperación interparlamentaria más amplio.
Gracias, José Pedro. Thank you very much. It's very interesting to see the communications that José Pedro mentioned, that in the past we would only see the ones that as news and innovation. And now, after a while, we understood that other communications as well had some elements of artificial intelligence within the communications from the secretaries. So it's a very, very interesting base of information for colleagues to read about the meetings. And Miguel, allow me to bring my next question to you. And you mentioned about the events, about having these in-person gatherings that you have been promoting, the workshops, even the publications, which have valuable but short-term impacts on parliaments. In your view, what are the most effective and lasting instruments of interparliamentary cooperation to advance artificial intelligence expertise in parliaments, such as joint workshops, technical exchanges, even as some colleagues mentioned in the past as staff secondments in parliaments, where parliamentary officials can shadow colleagues in other institutions. So what are your thoughts on this, Miguel? Also in 3 minutes, please.
En estos 3 minutos. Mira, la verdad es que nosotros hemos puesto mucho énfasis en dos tipos de formas de colaboración. La directa, donde vamos a un país y ayudamos a ese país a tratar de desarrollar sus mejores capacidades en digitalización de documentos y en el uso de inteligencia artificial, atendido a las circunstancias de ese país. No todos los países son iguales. Por ejemplo, con un proyecto de la Unión Europea que se llama Archibot, nosotros muy creativos le pusimos Archilebot, y ahora en Uruguay en el Senado uruguayo lo van a incorporar y le pondrán un nombre, espero que un poco más creativo que el nuestro. Pero eso es una forma directa. Ahora, ¿por qué? Porque Uruguay tiene las capacidades de hacerlo. Pero si tú eso lo llevas a Curazao, tal vez no lo vamos a poder hacer porque probablemente el Parlamento de Curazao es tan pequeño que no tiene las capacidades técnicas ni tiene las capacidades de recursos para hacerlo. Eso es una cosa. La segunda, que también es a largo plazo, es cuando van especialistas nuestros, no solo técnicos, sino también personas que están en los programas de promoción y desarrollo, porque tenemos dos áreas, el de promoción y desarrollo. Y entonces van hace poco al Parlamento de Panamá o al Parlamento latinoamericano y les muestran a las autoridades del Parlamento latinoamericano los avances que hace Chile. No para demostrar los avances que hace Chile, para ver cómo ellos toman una iniciativa como la que tiene Chile, la mejoran, que además nos enriquece otra vez a todos porque hay un conocimiento que vuelve y que vuelve con ideas mejoradas. Es lo que nos pasa a nosotros con el Parlamento Europeo. El Parlamento Europeo tiene muchas más capacidades de desarrollo que Chile. Ellos desarrollan algún tipo de elementos que nos interesa en nuestra colaboración, ¿no es cierto? Y en nuestros tratados de intercambio con el Parlamento Europeo y con la Unión Europea en general, nos pasan transferencia de tecnología, nosotros innovamos sobre esa tecnología y lo que hacemos es entregarles a un nuevo Parlamento que tiene menos capacidades o menos desarrollo que el nuestro. ¿Y cómo lo hacemos? Lo hacemos a través de foros, a través de seminarios, a través de talleres. Mira, ahora en noviembre, finales, tenemos un taller en Chile donde solo viene España y Ecuador. ¿Y por qué España y Ecuador? Porque curiosamente España, a pesar de ser parte de la Unión Europea, no siempre las naciones de la Unión Europea, los parlamentos nacionales tienen una relación tan directa con el Parlamento Europeo porque hay otro tipo de organización interna. Y por lo tanto, a veces tenemos que ser nosotros, en el caso nuestro Chile, el que lleve estos desarrollos. Con Brasil, bueno, tú sabes muy bien que nuestra relación con Brasil es de amor en esto, y uso la palabra amor, porque llevamos muchos años trabajando con gente de Brasil, particularmente con Patricia Almeida durante muchos años en Cámara de Diputados, y en el Senado ahora que está Danilo de secretario general también es mucho más fácil. ¿Cuál es la gracia al final? ¿Por qué participamos en los foros? Porque es distinto cuando tú conoces a la persona. Es decir, yo conozco a Eric muchos años, la última vez efectivamente estuvimos el 24, no pude que viniera, pero mandó oficiales a mi evento, entonces se forma una relación de personas que nos conocemos y que tratamos de colaborar. Puede que a él no le interese nada la inteligencia artificial, pero ¿sabes qué? Pero sí tiene una cosa relevante, que sí le interesa la innovación y sí le interesa compartir. Y lo mismo hacemos con Parlamérica y con todos los demás foros. Entonces, ¿qué ganamos nosotros? Ganamos también experiencias de cómo otra persona, con las herramientas que nosotros le facilitamos, desarrollan productos nuevos, desarrollan innovaciones a lo que nosotros hacemos, que después, por supuesto, Chile también tiene la posibilidad de incorporar a sus procesos.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for your thoughts on this. Eric, would you like to share some ideas about this question as well?
Yes, it would be my pleasure to do so. So indeed, conferences and publications are valuable for raising awareness, but to truly build lasting expertise in artificial intelligence across parliaments, I think it's helpful to have options that outlive specific events. So a couple of ideas I'd like to share. First, standing working groups or networks dedicated to AI and digital governance can really make a difference when parliaments share not just ideas, but also model frameworks, strategies, guidelines, governance approaches. Inter-parliamentary cooperation becomes very practical and tactical. So as an example, the House of Commons has shared its staff guidelines on the safe use of generative AI with many other parliaments as part of bilateral, often virtual, follow-up discussions so that they can benefit from the work that we have already undertaken in this space and adapt it to their own context. This was done for us when we attempted to draft our first set of guidelines, and it proved immensely helpful to have a starting point to launch on. Parliaments, after all, are not in competition with one another in the way that the private sector would be. We have the opportunity to learn and to grow collaboratively. Second, it would be helpful to continue to share information through sites that collect case studies, toolkits, and lessons learned. This turns individual experiences into collective parliamentary knowledge. So the IPU currently has a database with use cases from across parliaments, which provides us with an opportunity to proactively contact colleagues who may already be trying out technology that we are interested in adopting or exploring. I would also be interested in pushing this kind of analysis a little bit further and showcasing even some experiences that perhaps did not quite work well, so that we can learn from each other's challenges and not only from each other's achievements. This is something that we plan to do internally at the House of Commons with a use case database that we will develop for our own staff for smaller scale AI pilots. And finally, cooperative pilot projects, developing or testing open source parliamentary AI tools together, create both efficiency and shared ownership of innovation. Again, as we are not in competition with one another, the opportunity to collaborate, share code, pilot projects, technical expertise, etc., can be immensely valuable. I believe some of this work is already underway, as I've heard that CPA, IPU, Parliamericas, and the UN have jointly sponsoring some research into AI tools for parliaments. So, while conferences start the conversation, the most lasting impact, I would argue, comes from institutionalized collaboration, shared knowledge, and people-to-people learning that allows parliaments to evolve together as technology advances. I believe we're already well on this path to these actions working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your thoughts on this. José Pedro, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Sí, cómo no. Yo creo, esta es una posición muy personal, pero yo creo que los instrumentos más efectivos y duraderos para fomentar las experiencias en inteligencia artificial en los parlamentos son aquellos que priorizan la inmersión práctica y la colaboración continua por encima de los eventos puntuales. Por lo tanto, yo entiendo que si bien los talleres son útiles para la sensibilización inicial, su durabilidad es muy baja, ¿no? La verdadera práctica se construye a través de la aplicación y el intercambio sostenido, bien como decía Miguel y como decía recién Eric, ¿no? Por eso yo soy muy partidario, por ejemplo, de los intercambios de personal. Por ejemplo, un funcionario de un parlamento determinado pasa un periodo determinado, 1 o 2 funcionarios integrando el equipo análogo de otro parlamento que ya tiene experiencia en inteligencia artificial. Y esto lo vimos hace poco cuando, bueno, lo ha nombrado recientemente Miguel, ¿no? Lo que sucedió este año cuando varios funcionarios de distintos parlamentos, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, y todos se unieron y estuvieron trabajando ahí. ¿Qué es lo que trae esto? ¿Por qué? Porque el funcionario no solo aprende sobre inteligencia artificial, sino que ve cómo se gestiona se debate y se adquiere y se regula en el entorno real, ¿no? O sea, ve el funcionamiento real. Resuelve problemas reales junto a sus colegas y observando éxitos y fracasos y aprende el cómo y el porqué de las decisiones. Eso es muy importante. Otro tema también importante es el proyecto de herramientas y equipos conjuntos, ¿no? Entiendo yo que 2 o más parlamentos, por ejemplo, se comprometen formalmente a abordar un desafío común relacionado con la inteligencia artificial. Forman un equipo de trabajo conjunto con funcionarios de ambas instituciones para co-desarrollar una solución. Esto lo hace mucho Chile con distintos parlamentos de América, que sirve mucho. Y por último, también creo yo que también sería importante una creación de redes técnicas permanentes, ¿no? Un foro formal o informal, la creación de un foro formal o informal, auspiciado por una organización, puede ser interparlamentaria, como por ejemplo la Unión Interparlamentaria o redes regionales, donde los funcionarios técnicos de diferentes parlamentos puedan trabajar en temas de la inteligencia artificial y puedan conectarse regularmente y evacuar consultas que puedan tener sobre determinados puntos a través de esas redes. Existió, que no tiene nada que ver con inteligencia artificial, pero digo, existió que capaz que Eric y Miguel lo conocen, lo que era el Link en un momento, que estaba en Washington, que era todo sobre temas de bases constitucionales y legales, donde se podían consultar directamente lo que estaba sucediendo en los distintos parlamentos de América. Bueno, un foro así, crear un foro así también sería muy importante. Bueno, eso es más o menos lo que quería aportar.
Muchas gracias, José Pedro. Thank you. It's interesting that you bring this example. I remember Anders Johnson, the former Secretary General from the IPU, mentioned some 20 years ago, they had this idea also of having staff secondments on different parliaments as an effective way, not about AI, but about different innovation initiatives at the time. So it's very good to hear that from you. Grant, would you like to share your thoughts on this as well? Grant, you're on mute.
Back when I very first started in this field, I was actually quite surprised at how little collaboration there was among the US states where I was working for California. And there was no shared knowledge, nothing was being shared. And I asked the question, why isn't there any collaboration? I come from the aerospace industry where there are lots of contractors, subcontractors. You're not always in competition with one another. Sometimes you have to share information as you're jointly building a system. And the answer I got was there's no need to collaborate. The end result are paper documents that are read by human beings. There's nothing that needs to be shared. States don't do business with one another legislatively, so they don't have a need. Haven't found a reason to have joint initiatives, which to me at the time was a little bit disappointing. But it made sense. The end result was paper. The focus was on the production of that paper. It was an inward focus rather than an outward focus. But times have changed. Today, the consumer isn't reading those authentic PDF documents that have been put out there. The consumer are computer programs that are reading it, whatever information has been published in whatever form it's been published. And those tools aren't built for specific jurisdictions. Those tools are built in a very general purpose way. And that emphasizes the need to be able to work together to ensure that those tools are correctly interpreting that information and that everyone is publishing the information in a consistent enough way that there is leverage, that there is accuracy, that there's precision in how that information is interpreted. So to me, it's more important now that there be levels of cooperation that there haven't been in the past. And I think we, as a field, have to find ways to come together much more at a much faster rate than we've been doing in the past, because we're not going back to reading paper documents the consumer is not going to be a human being at the other end. The consumer is going to be computer programs that are sourcing information from what's been published. And it's everyone's responsibility to ensure that what those systems are consuming is correct, is accurate, and is provided in a way that those tools will understand. And that can only be achieved collaboratively.
Thank you very much, Grant, for your thoughts on this. Julius, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Yeah, thank you so much, Luís. From my perspective, I think what would be useful is to ensure that we strike a balance. From what I've observed is that, like the professional development seminars that we've held at SOCAT, those largely focus on raising awareness around issues of artificial intelligence. But there's need to ensure that we also facilitate more practical engagements among member parliaments, where maybe the technical people can interact with each other to learn from each other and be able to see in action what AI is doing for other parliaments. And as part of those learning exchange visits, there is need to also have a right mix in terms of who are part of those teams that are undertaking the visits. One of the things that we've observed is there is a lot of resistance from the political leadership. I've had an experience where some of the member parliaments have undertaken visits to learn from other parliaments around issues of AI, where they've also included members of parliament, just for them to appreciate what AI can do, so that when they go back to their countries and they start pushing the agenda of implementing AI, there is buy-in from the members of parliament. Then what is also useful, like what SOCAT has adopted, is when we have a discussion at the professional development seminar level, which is a learning and sharing exchange at the regional level, the topics are cascaded at the lower level, at the sub-regional level, to allow the member parliaments to have an in-depth discussion around the topics and also issues related to artificial intelligence, and also strengthen the networking at that level, where they're able to collaborate and be able to support each other in terms of how best they could advance issues related to artificial intelligence. Then we've also realized that one of the key aspects to this is the issue of partnerships, learning from others, and the learning should be beyond the good practices. We also need to know what worked well, what didn't work well, so that other parliaments are able to learn from parliaments that are advanced, and learn from what are some of the mistakes or what are the challenges, so that they're able to navigate themselves in a manner that will assist them to implement their AI initiatives more effectively. So as SOCAT, we believe a combination of interventions is also a very good approach. Over and above the workshops, let's also bring in the practical aspects where people will be able to undertake exchange visits or be attached to a parliament that is doing well in terms of artificial intelligence, so that the technical people can learn in practice and be able to localize whatever they've learned and apply in their parliaments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julius, for your contribution and your thoughts on this. And I will bring my last question, and I see that we have 8 minutes until the end of our panel. So if we can keep our answers a little bit more concise. So we try to keep it on time, so it doesn't disturb your schedule. And I will invite Eric to answer first. And Eric, in the field of inter-parliamentary diplomacy, which is your field, if I may say, and are there any existing parameters used to evaluate the effectiveness of such cooperation initiatives? And then my following question would be, if so, which of them could be applied or adapted to assess parliamentary diplomacy as a tool to disseminate knowledge on AI?
No, very good question, Luis. And just to mention, I'm good to go till 15 past the hour. In inter-parliamentary diplomacy, effectiveness is often measured less by formal metrics and more by quality and continuity of engagement. So with that said, though, there are a few useful parameters we can draw from. One is participation and inclusivity. How broadly an initiative brings together different parliaments, political traditions, and technical capabilities. The wider and more sustained the participation, the stronger the foundation for knowledge exchange. I believe we already have various networks and associations in place to ensure that we can share information as broadly as possible and foster connections between parliaments who may wish to continue exchanging on AI. So 2 quick examples. I had the good fortune a couple of weeks ago of attending the biannual Canada-US Clerks conference. And despite the very different political systems between Canada and the US, the administrative challenges, including AI, are very, very similar on both sides of the border. We also have, very similar to Julius's group in Africa, we have something similar here in Canada, an association of clerks at the table, federal, provincial, territorial levels. And we have amongst that group a committee or a subcommittee, if you will, specifically on the topic dedicated to the topic of technology. And of course, they've been very focused on AI as well as of late. A second point to make is institutional uptake. We could look at whether cooperation leads to tangible changes inside parliaments, such as new working groups or frameworks that embed the lessons learned. That's often the best indicator that cooperation has moved from dialogue to actual impact. At the House of Commons, as previously mentioned, we've made it part of our practice to share our AI guidelines, our strategy, our communications, products, and practical steps we have taken openly with other parliaments. These are the tangible results of our work, documents and frameworks that move us from dialogue to impact. Our hope is that by sharing this information, we turn ideas into something others can use, adapt, and build on. It's a way to encourage collaboration, to avoid everyone reinventing the wheel. Most importantly, it helps create a shared foundation for responsible and ethical use of AI across legislatures so we can all advance together. And finally, we can see the evolution of AI in parliaments over time when we see whether initiatives continue beyond a single conference cycle. In that sense, it would be helpful to have mechanisms for updating, evaluating, and reporting progress. For example, the IPU use case database. This can also be advanced, as I've mentioned before, through continued bilateral engagements after large conferences, or even through dialogues and events like what we are doing here today. So in short, success in parliamentary diplomacy on AI will be measured not only by what we talk about together, but what we then build and sustain together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your thoughts. José Pedro, would you like to share your ideas on this topic as well?
Sí, bien cortito para no ocupar mucho tiempo. Entiendo que sí que existen parámetros establecidos para la evaluación de la efectividad de la cooperación, particularmente en el ámbito interparlamentario y de desarrollo. Esto puede adaptarse para medir la diplomacia parlamentaria como instrumento de difusión de conocimiento sobre la inteligencia artificial. Entiendo que la clave de la adaptación es pasar de la métrica tradicional, o sea, de la actividad, números de talleres, a la métrica de impacto o cambio institucional, el uso real del conocimiento de la inteligencia artificial. Como dije al principio, la Asociación de Secretarios es una plataforma, o sea, donde nos juntamos los secretarios generales de distintos países del mundo, o sea, de todos los países del mundo, y donde hacemos un intercambio. Y bueno, y la métrica para poder ver el desarrollo de la inteligencia artificial y eso, bueno, es el conocimiento o las explicaciones que nos dan los distintos secretarios de cómo ellos van evolucionando o cómo ellos han trabajado. Nosotros servimos de plataforma para ayudar a ese intercambio. Y si ese intercambio produce grandes beneficios, sobre todo en el uso de la inteligencia artificial, bueno, nosotros nos sentimos satisfechos de que la misión se cumplió. Es eso más o menos lo que quería comunicarles.
Muchas gracias, José Pedro. Thank you very much. Miguel, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yo trataré de ser más breve que José Pedro, lo cual es difícil. No, mira, sí hay siempre evaluaciones que hacen los parlamentos internos de cuántos recursos usan en la cooperación internacional y, por supuesto, los resultados. Y los resultados se miden primero por el interés que los parlamentos tienen en seguir algunos proyectos. Entonces tú sigues invirtiendo en la cooperación. Pero más que hacer una evaluación tan así parametral en que tú tengas que tener no sé cuántos tokens nos vamos a gastar o cuántos dólares nos vamos a gastar o qué sé yo. Yo creo que también hay cosas que tienen que ver con la gran política. Cuando digo de la gran política, es que si tú tienes vocación de cooperación, de ayudar al que tiene menos desarrollo, lo tienes que hacer también un poco por ese espíritu altruista de que al hermano que está al lado le vaya mejor. Porque al final del día lo que se busca es que existe un cierto nivel que mejore la democracia. Y la democracia se mejora cuando tú tienes instrumentos que permiten que los parlamentos puedan comunicar a sus sociedades lo que hacen. El gran problema que afecta hoy día al sistema democrático es la falta de información de lo que los parlamentos hacen. Es decir, la inteligencia artificial no nos va a solucionar los problemas. Es decir, los problemas vienen de otras partes, pero son instrumentos para que tú hagas mejor tu trabajo. Nosotros estamos trabajando, por ejemplo, estamos colocando mucho énfasis en mejorar nuestra página web y nuestra información. Chile es un país que tiene muchísima información en su página web sobre el trabajo legislativo, pero no sirve de nada si la gente no puede acceder fácilmente, si tu página web no tiene, por ejemplo, condiciones de accesibilidad universal, de que las personas que son sordomudas o las personas que son no videntes puedan ingresar a los datos. Si no desarrollas un aplicativo para que la búsqueda sea fácil, la gente no va a encontrar la información que hay. Entonces, creo que lo que tratamos de hacer en cooperar, más allá de instrumentos de inteligencia, hoy día inteligencia artificial, ojo, a la vuelta de la esquina está la robótica, que es otro gran tema. Lo que hacemos es tratar de tener elementos, de tener instrumentos, de poner a disposición de otros países aplicaciones para que mejoren su participación ciudadana, para que como lo hace Canadá, por ejemplo, para que mejoren su información a la ciudadanía y para que la democracia al final del día sea más robusta, no solo en América, sino que en África, etcétera, etcétera. Eso creo que es nuestra contribución y nuestra experiencia.
Muchas gracias, Miguel. Thank you very much. Julius, would you like to share your thoughts on this briefly? Julius, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Thank you so much, Luís. Yeah, I think when you're trying to assess the effectiveness of interparliamentary engagements, we need to be mindful that what we are trying to see is the value addition of these interparliamentary interventions on individual member parliaments. But again, we also need to be mindful that we are not in control of the application of the lessons which will be learned or the good practices that will be drawn from various interventions by the member parliaments. However, in the context of SOCAT, our structure and the governance mechanism as an inbuilt monitoring mechanism. We have what we call the sub-region representatives who represent all the sub-regions. And as part of their work, one of the things that they need to do is they need to report on what each sub-region is doing in relation to the activities of the society. In case we have a workshop, like the last professional development seminar that we had, the next professional development seminar, all the sub-region representative will be expected to report on what has happened in the respective parliaments, and also just to take stock and give information around what each parliament is doing around issues of artificial intelligence, and what are some of the good practices and what is it that needs to improve. But we don't have a systematic tool that we use to measure the effectiveness of the interparliamentary initiatives. But the structure assists us to do that by way of reporting to the steering committee and the general membership. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julius. Grant, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Yes, thanks, Luís. I work with a lot of different jurisdictions around the world, and I work, probably the biggest cooperation initiative that I work on is in the development of legal dark ML or Komentoso. I've been working on that for a decade now. Today, that's still very much of a pull. It's a case of if we build it, they will come. We encourage people to adopt it. It hasn't yet turned into a push where jurisdictions are seeing a strong enough need to move towards structured data that now they need capabilities and they are pushing us to advance the technology. And I think the part of the reason for that is there isn't a very good guidance towards where jurisdictions need to be going when it comes to managing information. People are still very much skewed towards publishing paper, publishing PDFs. They haven't yet moved to publishing information, publishing knowledge. And we need metrics, ways to measure where people are on a continuum of an evolutionary continuum, and tools that help them assess where they are and where they need to go. Without those tools, without those metrics, I'm afraid that the pace of change is going to be too slow to meet the demands that are being put upon us by the information age or the knowledge age, as AI tools become more prominent.
Thank you very much, Grant. Thank you all of you for all of the incredible considerations that you brought for today's panel. I know we are a little bit over time, but I want to grant you some 30 seconds each to say a farewell message before we go. And I'll start with Julius. Julius, would you like to, in 30 seconds, to say your final message for colleagues?
Okay. Thank you so much. AI is a seemingly new phenomenon in the African parliaments. And as SOCAT will continue to prioritize advancing AI among the member parliaments. Like I explained earlier, even in the next professional development seminar, one of the topics that will be looked at is a topic related to AI, and we wish to continue partnering with Bússola Tech and also other parliaments that are advanced in the area of artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julius, for your participation and for your thoughts. Eric, would you like to share your final message as well?
Yes, would be my pleasure. So over my career, Luís, I've had the privilege of supporting and participating in many forms of interparliamentary diplomacy. The subjects obviously evolve. Today it's artificial intelligence. Tomorrow it'll be something new, but the underlying value remains constant. Basically, that these exchanges remind us that regardless of geography or political system, we face similar challenges and can learn so much from each other and each other's experiences. What truly matters is the spirit of openness, curiosity, and shared purpose that drives this cooperation. So when we bring that same spirit to emerging fields like AI, we ensure that parliaments continue to lead with integrity, inclusivity, and innovation together. So thank you very much for the opportunity to having participated in today's excellent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Very well said, and much appreciated for your time, your participation today. Grant, would you like to share your final message?
Yes, thanks, Luís. I think AI is probably one of the biggest changes we're going to see in our lifetime. It brings with it a lot of opportunities and a lot of time to rethink how we do things. These are things that we're only going to solve together collaboratively. And I find it heartening that we can have discussions like this, that we now have a platform upon which to have these sorts of discussions around the world. rather than trying to solve these problems by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant, for your thoughts, your participation, for waking up so early to be with all of us here today. That's incredibly much appreciated. So thank you. José Pedro, would you like to say your final message for colleagues today as well?
Sí, muchas gracias. Luis, primero que nada, agradecerte por la invitación y permitirme de participar en este panel tan prestigioso. Bueno, pedir disculpas a Julius porque no lo nombré al principio. Me acuerdo de sí, de su presencia hace 2 años en Brasilia, cuando participamos de un seminario también de inteligencia artificial. Bueno, agradecer también, bueno, a Miguel y a Eric tener, ojalá que podamos volvernos a ver en abril en Estambul. Y bueno, y el Grant, en algún momento nos cruzaremos y podremos conversar ya más personalmente. La Asociación de Secretarios está trabajando en esto y saben que es un instrumento, como he dicho, una plataforma para justamente todo el trabajo de la inteligencia artificial, que hay que ir usándola, pero como dijo Miguel, con mucho cuidado. Hay que tener mucho cuidado y hay que siempre tiene que haber una persona atrás, un ser humano, porque, bueno, todavía no sabemos lo que puede terminar. Pero bueno, les agradezco mucho y les deseo que terminen un buen día.
Muchas gracias, José Pedro. Thank you very much for today's participation. Miguel, would you like to share your final message as well?
Sí, bueno, solo agradecer a los amigos y colegas que no veo hace tiempo, a la discusión, a Eric, a José Pedro lo veo más seguido, así que no hay problema, a Grant, que está lejos y que la última vez nos vimos en Washington, a Julius, no lo conozco personalmente, pero y para bienes, y lo mismo que a Luis. Y solo una observación, no tengo tiempo de contestar, pero decirles a Peter Handwet que puso una observación. Peter es una persona que nos sigue en el chat del seminario. Quiero decirle muy breve, nosotros estamos justamente tratando de evitar eso, de llenar el vacío de la digitalización y para eso es muy importante la colaboración. Es decir, hay muchos parlamentos, no solo en África, en América también, que no tienen documentos o que los documentos que tienen no están digitalizados. Y estamos trabajando en eso y para eso tenemos un proyecto que se llama ArtChilebot que ayuda mucho. Así que espero verlos pronto. Ojalá a muchos de ustedes en Chile en julio próximo en el gran evento, en el gran show que vamos a hacer sobre tecnología.